I like my African queen thing I got going on. This is like the fourth hairstyle I didn't try for this video. Listen, would y'all believe me if I told y'all that I have spent months working on this video? Which is crazy because voting as an issue is not my thing. I do not canvass for any parties or politicians. I don't have no buttons, no stickers, no posters. I don't donate to anybody. And I have not made a dollar on the making of this video. I will not make any money off of this video. Nobody asked me to make this video. You'll notice you find no ads on this video or any of my videos as it stands. And I say all that to you because a lot of people who are pushing things to you re-voting or anti-voting are getting a check and they have an agenda. And I am not getting a check, but I do have an agenda, and I want to be very transparent with you about what that agenda is. If you know me already, you probably know me from my work as a public defender in New York City and as an advocate for abolition, bail reform, notably in New York City and Illinois, or for my general advocacy against policing and police brutality and for the Black community and for other marginalized groups. Or maybe you know me from my writing or some viral clip or Raheem. Or maybe you discovered me for the first time right here on YouTube. And if so, I love that. Hey y'all. But how I define myself is as a movement lawyer or a professional loudmouth, as I usually say. And it's what it sounds like. I'm a lawyer who works in furtherance of movements. And I do that by working with different communities, organizations, and individuals nationwide to fight in favor of things they need, like the Pretrial Fairness Act and Solitary Confinement Act, saving bail reform and ending cash bail. What's important to me is the liberation of Black people, which requires the liberation of all marginalized people and freedom from capitalism, patriarchy, and the prison industrial complex. So I work in furtherance of that goal. The first thing that we need to understand today, which I will expand on later in this video, is that change is made by the people, not the government. And two, all governments are oppositional forces resisting change. That's why we call our efforts a resistance. So to do the work I do, to do any work that's about changing the status quo, the people must fight against the government. Who the government is has a lot to do with how difficult that fight will be. The work I do, how hard I have to fight, shoots. Whether I'm able to fight at all has a lot to do with who's in office. Whether we have a Republican or Democrat administration drastically impact whether I'm able to do the advocacy I do, whether the movements that I support are able to pass laws or save the ones that we've already passed, like the landmark bail reform that took effect in New York City in 2020, or the Pretrial Fairness Act that was just implemented in Illinois after surviving a round of attacks from Republicans, making Illinois the first state to abolish cash bail. The increasing popular sentiment I see growing in my online spaces is that Democrats and Republicans are the same, and thus voting doesn't matter, or worse, that people shouldn't vote. And that troubles me because of what the consequences of people believing that and acting accordingly would mean for the work I do and the goal I'm working towards. Listen to me and listen to me good. In my Olayame's heart and soul, I don't give a personal about Joe Biden, Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, Marianne Williamson, Cornel West, RFK, or anybody else running for president. I am not friends with any of them. I don't campaign for none of them. I don't donate to none of them. And I'm not personally offended or moved by your support.
So, as we talked about yesterday or tomorrow, in the show, Renee's show, this is a Greg Carr all the way. The whole video is all a Greg Carr student seem like. And then as you can see, this idea of all states are bad and this other stuff that she's talking about. I literally actually about to stop the video then, but because I saw your homeboy FD and Mark was gonna be on there, I was like, let me just skim through it. But there's a bunch of different timestamps on there. And I don't know if you know her. Any of y'all know who that lady is? This is my first time hearing her, but go ahead, Diallo.
What was
I'm a little bit familiar.
Oh.
Go ahead.
No. What were your specific issues with that, with the first 2 minutes you asked to play?
More so the all governments are bad, all states are bad comment is the thing that I find silly, but also kind of like this idea, like throughout the time she'll get into this idea of both of them are bad, and she'll literally say one of them is a road to Black liberation, you got to go past them, and the other one is fascism, so you have to go up the hill through the Democratic Party to get liberation. But yeah, that initial statement to me, like I wouldn't want to speak much to people who would talk about revolution, then say all states are bad and all this other stuff. So that's why I was about to stop. I
But
did
if she has an anarcho perspective, if or
anarcho, she don't.
yes,
No, I don't. I mean, I don't think
if
I heard
she, I mean,
anarcho.
that's anti-statism. That's an anti-state position.
Okay, well, I don't. It does, the way I read or listened to that video, it doesn't sound like her objective is anarchism or communism or anything of stateless. Like I don't even know what watching that video. I don't even know what she means by liberation or liberating Black people. But before we get into it, if you can defend or you agree with any of what she said, I mean, maybe.
Yeah, I agree with just in those 2 moments. I was looking for the issue. I was waiting.
So you think all states are bad too?
I don't think any state is inherently good. No, I don't think all states are bad just
Or
out
yeah.
the gate. But I don't trust the state. I think that a state should be
The state or a state?
the state.
Which state though?
The one
US?
that I'm subjected to.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Do you have some good states for me?
I mean, I don't know what you call good, but I think there are states that are doing the best they can, and people have
You want to name them?
Nicaragua, I think Venezuela, Cuba, like all of those states who are moving towards a direction. I think those are. I mean, I don't know if we want to talk about good or bad terms, but this idea of good and bad is just
Yeah, well, I've worked with anarchists for quite a few years, and they do have a lot of valid arguments. And someone's mentioning Vietnam and Eritrea. Jesus Christ, Eritrea. So yeah, I think the state, because I think the state should always be looked at with suspicion, and states should. To me, the quality of a state or the goodness of the state is directly proportional to its vulnerability to the governed. States that have are vulnerable to the governed are, to me, would be defined as a good state or an acceptable state. The state where the people have the power to pull the plug or to change the administration.
okay. So
So
the one,
if I had, I wouldn't really use good or bad in reference to a state. That's like saying money is good or bad, or a gun is good or bad. The state is an instrument. It's an institution that is more vulnerable to being bad than it, or more likely to be bad than good, because of the nature of state and its relationship to the economy. But I just think saying states are good or bad is kind of like is not really, because again, as I said, it's an object, it's an institution. I think you have to be more specific. There are some states that are more responsive to the people and serve the interests of the people, but they are few and far between.
So Jared, before we let's queue up the 25-minute mark, please, and then because then I would definitely be interested in Diallo's response to what she said about Marcus Garvey and his idea of revolution and civil engagement. But so you said you deal with anarchists a little bit, right? And in this, all through this video, well, not you, Jared, but Diallo, all through this video, she's having this idea of, and I when people say this, they're supposed to be left, and then they always talking about the left, and it's like, oh well, the left and the real left, and even FD was kind of like shitting on what he thought was the radical left, and he and they are more of a sober left, and I've never got to understand. Okay, what exactly are you talking about? And again, it sounds like the Greg Carr debate, like Carr talking shit about the people on the left and the left this and that. I'm like. So it was just a bunch of foolishness.
Is that in the next clip?
Well, now I can't remember if this one is more so of,
because I didn't see this far ahead. I didn't see this much of I didn't get that far. I don't think I got that far in this video.
Past 2 minutes?
Huh?
You didn't get past 2 minutes?
No, he's talking about the 25th minute mark and beyond.
Yeah.
No, I really wasn't gonna get past 2:30 either, but But I think this one, she's more talking about like you either with revolution or civic engagement. And she said, I'm radical, but I'm not revolutionary. And then she goes into the difference between Marcus Garvey And there's a point where she actually compared George Jackson to an organizer in St. Louis who got arrested. She said these two people are revolutionary, and I'm like, I mean, it's just a whole bunch of wild shit that she was saying. But
Is that in this clip?
no, this
Is
clip
that what-
is the Marcus Garvey
Okay.
comment. Yeah,
And you want me to pull that up now?
yeah.
Okay.
Years. And that told me something very important. Marcus Garvey would not be surprised at where we, Black people, find ourselves today, just 83 years after his death. He wholeheartedly believed that Black people would only be free when we freed ourselves through organized violence. And he thought that today's predicament would be likely in the next 100 or 200 years from the time he predicted it. Yet, he never tried to organize us to violence and lead that revolution. But he continued to educate, write. He founded organizations, he inspired people, he globalized pan-Africanism, and he engaged in political resistance in significant other ways. But he didn't burn it all down. And what I take from that is, despite Garvey's belief that there was only one true path to freedom, violent revolution, it did not mean that he believed he was the person capable of carrying it out. It did not make it his role to play. He showed up in the ways that he could. He used the tools that he could that were and continue to be valuable in our collective struggle. The way I see it, there are two roads to be taken: revolution or civic engagement. Unless I am prepared to advocate for violence, pick up arms, lose my life, become a political prisoner, and everything else that comes along with truly choosing revolution and deciding you want to carry out some radical or violent overthrow of the government, there is no reason for me to sit up here and present myself like some kind of revolutionary. The real revolutionaries, people like George Jackson, who studied guerrilla warfare and really tried to organize people, died political prisoners, lost brothers.
Man, it is.
Or Joshua Williams, who was in prison for 8 years for setting a trash can on fire at a Ferguson protest in 2014. If you are not prepared to possibly face those kinds of outcomes, please be terribly honest with yourself and resist the urge to cosplay as people who are really about that life. You can still be incredibly valuable and transformative in the ways that you were meant to show up, in the role meant for you. And that's on the other road, the civic engagement road. And if you choose to take that road, the one that already isn't the one true genuine path to freedom, you have a million tools to try to change or resist oppressive systems. And voting is but one. But the least.
So my bad. It actually was that part where she compared them. But I see there's no lies. Everybody in agreement with it. How y'all feel about?
So the the one problem that I'm stuck on, and it's just because I haven't engaged Garvey's work sufficiently or in recently enough, but I don't remember that being his primary argument.
Yeah, right.
Number one, and she didn't address his primary tactic of organizing business, his argument for how his planned return for us to Africa, et cetera. So she didn't get it. So that was confusing. And then just sort of conflated it with George Jackson as if, but all right. So that was one point. But what my biggest problem is, if I had any at all with what she's saying, is that if I understood based on what I saw in the first few minutes of this video, and it's 3 hours long, I didn't watch it enough or closely enough. But based on what you've said, if this means, if she's using this to frame an argument around why we need to end up supporting establishment mainstream electoral politics, then I would have a major problem. Right. Because it sets up that false dichotomy between either you engage electoral politics in the standard way, or you are some silly revolutionary who's not willing to actually engage in revolutionary violence. As if there's no, and that's where I see the after party argument and other endeavor as in third party, as there is a middle ground. You don't have to say pick up guns or vote for Biden, as if there's no alternative or other way we can engage. And that's the problem that I have with that sort of that false engagement with revolutionary history and radical theory, and not really just to set up that, again, that false dichotomy, which then allows for the argument to be, if we vote for Biden, if we support at best Bernie Sanders, we are as revolutionary as you could expect. And I just don't agree with that.
Right. So before you go, Diallo, so I think this is the point. So even what I'm hearing, and then maybe because I know the conclusion to all those other things, but I even see, several people in the chat saying, well, what did she say wrong? I think, I'm in agreement. But again, this idea of either take the guns and start taking it to them or whatever, or you're not true. And then the guy who burned the trash can, I don't know that story for real, but to say he's the revolutionary because he burned the trash can or whatever the case may be. But again, the idea,
or to define revolutionary action as just burning a trash can, or randomly engaging in what is broadly defined as violence. Although she did mention guerrilla warfare specifically for George. But okay.
So if Garvey or any other revolutionary who has theory understand that while the state has the monopoly on violence, it's illogical to not be organized at all and assume that you could violently overthrow a government that you have like 7 people or the 500 people in the chat, right? So again, that type of logic to me is just silly. And then I think in terms of her coming to this platform, she's talking about like, it's just my perspective. And her and FD, they frame it to where if you disagree with it, you just hating or you just weird. Or she said, I think he was saying like this basically a environment where we're gonna have the rigid left people come and just lose their shits and prove that they're more militant than us. So it's literally like the way in which they talking to their audience is setting it up to agree with whoever critiques them, or not even engage whoever critiques them. But go ahead, Diallo.
I think it is a fallacy to suggest that if you don't engage in it, that revolution is violent, inherently and intrinsically violent. I think that is part of the indoctrination process, that revolutionary are these people who lash out violently. And what is most obscene and absurd about that is that status quo people are the most, and perpetuate and justify the most violent. The status quo is violent, and everything that we think we avoid by not engaging in revolution, such as violent deaths, incarceration, surveillance from the state, subversion and disruption of our organizations and groups and gatherings, the violation of our constitution or residency or citizenship rights, everything that we're supposed to avoid by rejecting revolution gets intensified when we are not organized in a radical revolutionary stance. And we actually find relief, and at the very least, our enemies and oppressors are willing to make concessions when we are radically organized. So I don't like this distortion of revolution brings peace. Revolution is a response to violence. Revolution is a response to injustice. But people, as this lady was suggesting, is that revolution provokes violence. And revolutions do not provoke violence. The status quo is what provoked and perpetuates the violence. So she's saying, and also I think it is a false assertion or fallacious assertion that she would say that you can't be civically engaged, which I am a civic engaged. I've worked on political campaigns. I've written policy platforms. I've advised political candidates, local candidates here, and I vote in every single fucking election. And I am also a revolutionary. I think to create this notion that a revolutionary is a person who's out engaged in violent actions and also broken apart from or separated from. And even the people she notes, or even the revolutionaries we note of, ultimately, revolution is an intellectual endeavor. So this liberal I don't really think that, and I'm just speaking to the segments that are played here, and nothing more, because our audience or the people listening, they're just going off of what's said. Revolution brings about peace. You're not avoiding violence by rejecting revolution. You're
Right.
perpetuating and intensifying violence.
So FD, your homeboy is at 30-minute mark. If we can go there next, and it gets wilder and wilder.
Man, we not
That
talking
is a
about
conversation I've been
FD.
having in general, but the difference between the very black left in real life in terms of versus our online left to what is vocal.
Right. The real left is not going to be here on YouTube too tough. But the problem is the visible real left is very much a petite bourgeois project. Yeah. And there is an inherent, and I say this from experience, there's an inherent insecurity with the role we embody within these politics as part of the problem, and those who will have to sacrifice our class position in order to realize the goals we putting forth. Yeah. And so what happens is there's this cosplaying of revolutionary. There's people that want to prove that they're more radical and revolutionary than their class position dictates. And what it ends up doing is invisibilizing and marginalizing the real problems that regular people face. Regular people will be affected by a Republican administration versus a Democrat administration.
Yes.
Period.
I think that people romanticize and sensationalize revolution, or romanticize, sensationalize generation.
We can stop after this.
And it's just like, hey, listen, man, that all or nothing idea you have is very parasitic and violent and dangerous to people. You feel me? It's like, hey, if we can acknowledge that the way in which you get food stamps, the way in which the roads are hit, the way in which your kids get old books or new books, you feel me? The way in which your community is policed, all these, you usually come down to a question of voting.
I say that to say, I know.
Go ahead, stop it.
This is why I think it's necessary to say names.
I agree.
This is why you have to say names.
What? Listen, because you gonna see that tomorrow, because that's literally what we was talking about. He don't say no names. She don't say no names. Consciously don't say no names. And Greg Carr didn't say no names.
Yeah, I think it's because when you're talking about these broad ideologies or this broad concept of the left, or revolutionaries, you have to start saying, because obviously they're talking about specific actions and specific behaviors, so there must be people they see engaging in those actions and behaviors.
They talk about the online people in the chat. That's what they talk
about. Right. And this concept of what left is, and I would hope, fast and pray, that somewhere in there they take a moment to define what left is, what it means to be left, right, liberal, conservative, because those, and also define what revolution is and what a revolutionary is, because it seems like they have a quite myopic view of what a revolution is and what a revolutionary is or does or doesn't do. Because I mean, I can't even really, you can't really debate or even engage with your disagreements, because they're talking about these specters out there who we can't even say, well, that's an accurate assessment or an inaccurate assessment, because who are they talking about specifically? Which revolutionaries are they doing at? What revolutionaries? And you say that revolutionaries aren't online. Since when?
Bring your boy on. You gotta bring your boy on, Jared. He gonna have to clear some stuff up.
I'll reach out to him. I'll invite him to come on. I'll invite him to come on here and talk about it. So unlike Diallo, though, I am admitting a bias and some judgment based on a video I did watch of Ole that I talked about during the one of those hip hop discussions last year, where she did a long form, very friendly interview with DJ Ebro and talked glowingly about her relationship as a youngster growing up listening to Hot 97 and how great it was and how important he was and is to the culture and to the people. Which so my bias, having seen that, suggests that she is not qualified or she's not the best or most capable of discussing or assessing radical politics and movements. But I'm admitting a bias there, given my own critique of Ebro and Hot 97 and their relationship to hip hop and popular culture and all of that. And her inability to discern in that moment the differences there make me suspicious of her ability to discern between radical and revolutionary and what forms of even radicalism we should engage. But that said, you know, look, we can't. Look, look, that's what I'm saying. I think I agree with Diallo. Let me just say this again clearly. I agree with Diallo. We have to be able to be not only able to and willing to call out people's names, but to do it with some level of decency and principle and argue the point of their politics and not get into too much ad hominem. I get all of that. And be able to receive the criticism.
Yeah, we literally.
But here's the thing. Let me tell y'all what I hate.
What's slander? What's slander?
Y'all know I'm a hater innovator. I'm a full-fledged hater participator. And the thing I hate most about FD is I can't find shit to hate on him about. So, you know, that's my most frustrating thing. I want to hate on everybody that I can, and I wish I could come on.
Well, stay tuned. Stay tuned.
And I don't have anything to slander dude about because on his own platform, and this has happened to me before too. When someone invites you on to speak, you know, you're kind of couched into but when I see him speak for himself on his own behalf,
of course Eric will find
it's generally some sound and grounded analysis.
Hey,
but a lot of times, man, when we start talking about these ominous, groundless people, it just goes in too many directions. So if I get on here and talk about leftists and revolutionaries, I could talk about revolution, the ideology, the philosophy. I could talk about leftism, leftist agenda, leftist tactics, leftist values. But when I start talking about the leftists or the revolutionaries, I think it's I should have to name who I'm talking about, whether it's an individual or an organization. So I have no problem with them discussing revolution and their takes on revolution. So but when you start talking about what revolutionaries do and don't do, you got to.
So that's my problem. That's my point. Hold on, because Geechee, because FD is it. Look, I like the dude. He's had me in videos my students recognize and shout me out for, which is always a big deal to me. So I got my bias there, you know, against being critical of him too much. But so I should be checked there too. But what I've always liked about FD is that he's been at least very clear where his political line is. That's what I've always liked about. He's like, look, this is as far as I'm willing to go. He's even in his own platform talked about how he does try to appease certain segments of his audience and this, that, and the third. He knows what he's doing. He's very clear on that. So my issue, and I will text him right now and invite him to come on. And my one question would be, or my one critique based on what I've seen here, and this is where I'm very sensitive to this point from Renee, that the whole show should be watched and not develop too many critiques based on these small clips, because I have not seen much more than I do agree with that broadly methodologically, but I just want to say, to the extent that FD does not in this video or elsewhere clarify where he is on the political spectrum and how he's defining who is left of him and what that really means, I think that does do a disservice, because then it just leaves too much confusion and room for conservative and liberal analyses to step in. But yeah.
So I can agree with Renee in terms of one clip, but if there are several clips with a long enough time to hear they lay out their argument, right, I think it's important. And also to Diallo point, I looked through this, I skimmed through it, so I can't tell you I watched all of it, but I skimmed through it all the way till the end. And I don't hear much about the organization they're in and or the left organizations they can critique. Because even if you don't call people out, you should be able to call the organization out. so and so organization believes this, and this is why it's wrong.
Or
And
there
that
are
don't mean-
historical examples. If you don't want to bump heads with nobody that could show up at your doorstep, you can tell us, like when she was referencing Garvey incorrectly, talking about Garvey, when Garvey gave too many speeches, wrote down too much shit for us to be misinterpreting him as saying, you know, his whole thing is
Violence.
he was buying commercial steamships, not war barges. You know, come on.
Well,
But I
you know,
digress.
Charlamagne called him an entrepreneur, but go ahead, play the 30
Who said that?
Well, entrepreneur. You remember when he said he's a well-known entrepreneur? Charlamagne said that. You did a whack excellence video on it, but go ahead.
Oh, right.
This is Jared's other homeboy, consciously.
Why is this my homeboy?
Clever.
Because you said consciously on the video.
Them all your people, Jared. That's your arena.
that's
I said
your
consciously
I'm
on the
why
video.
didn't you show up on this video?
No, because I'm not in
The
this
radical
crew.
center.
It does not negate though that this right here is gonna be ran this way. And recognize that a lot of places, especially down south, the sheriff don't even have no opponent.
I am big on self-awareness, and I have never liked that we academics, lawyers, journalists, YouTubers, middle class and upper middle class, petite bourgeoisie, talented 10th ass, feeling like we need to pretend to be something else, that we need to posture like we the real in the trenches and adopt positions that are so senselessly privileged or harmful to the who are actually in the trenches. And I haven't seen more of that than what I've seen and how some folks are talking about this election. So I want to speak quickly to a few arguments I'm not going to be breathing life into in this video, and that's anti-voting / voting is legitimizing the state, accelerationism, and breaking the corporate duopoly. First, anti-voting. First of all, when I say anti-voting, I am not talking about voter apathy or even so much individual people deciding they're not going to vote or that they can't vote for one reason or the next. That makes sense.
I understand people's frustration for self, and I totally can like accept that, especially like in the US, like the idea sometimes people condescend others because they're like, just vote, why wouldn't you vote? And like, to me, of course, it takes me less than 5 minutes to do that in Canada. In the US, I'm seeing people like sometimes line 6 to 9 hours. Like that is a work day. Like I'm sorry, make that a national holiday. I know it's a totally separate issue, but I totally understand why people disenfranchised with that free access. It's like that. I literally can't. I can't take that much time off work to go do that or something like that. So in that respect, like I understand people's frustration, and also to your point that yes, it does seem at a lot of times both parties aren't representational of the people, especially not from a leftist perspective. Like they're both at the end of the day furthering policies that benefit the very rich. There's no question, no matter how you.
So again, this idea of a leftist perspective, she actually admit, I don't know if it was that clip, but she stopped and said, by all means, let me tell you, no, I'm a privileged person. So, but then even on the show, every guest she posed her as a privileged person. So they're like mostly lawyers or internet celebrities or whatever.
Again, I think Black people with formal education, Black people who have, and I think that class consciousness is necessary, but what she's asserting is not class consciousness. And to speak on behalf of the people she defined as in the trenches, but did she have any trench dwellers on the pop up in the discussion? So, and I do think that if you are a Black person who has some formal education or whatever else you have that's an asset, I don't think that you need to be shy about articulating your views, your positions, or have to get permission to engage in your people's liberation struggles or make a positive contribution to your people's just aspirations. You know, and what she's saying is quite elitist, even as she tries to couch it in denouncing or mocking the so-called elitists, but saying that, you know, the trench, the noble savage type point of view is just as pandering as though she was seeking to criticize or critique.
Yeah. And I mean, I think also one of the things FD said a couple of times was, I don't know what you're going to leave in. So you know that she's taking a bunch of clips and pretty much targeting towards her overall.
As some have noted in the chat, it is beautifully edited. I'm jealous as shit of the editing. I'm not even gonna front. The editing is wonderful. The lighting, the camera setup, the production value is dope. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off though. Sorry,
no,
keep going.
no. I'm just saying, but it's edited in a way also to where there was one white guy who seems like he had a line that would be more of what we were talking about, but it seems like once he made, like for instance, he ended up saying, "Well, that's why we need to vote for people like Cory Bush," and I was like, "Oh," and that's what.
But this is what. So again, from this clip and what else of this I've seen, and what else I've seen from some of these producers, because I've watched several videos from a number of the folks on this in this thing here. From my knowledge of this video and what else they produce, to be fair, they don't couch themselves in the radical politics we find around here. And this is what I'm always disturbed by when they make references to a Garvey or a George Jackson, even if it isn't as wrongly done as it was done here. It's done not using those politics as the frame to be developed for the piece they're talking about now. So they just make an allusion to them and then bring us back to this. Alex Vitale, the author of the History on Policing, End of Police, and all that. Some of which I've read and enjoyed, actually. From what I remember, I didn't go too far, but yeah. But that's my point. These creatives are not coming out of, again, radical politics, revolutionary political spaces. They're not engaging those ideas or those politics. And that's why the way she set it up suggests that nothing left of voting for the Democratic Party is mature, logical, radical, transformative. So it diminishes the kinds of work that she then says people in the trenches that she alludes to, that you all rightly point out don't appear in this video, that they're doing. So I'm confused also then by, what does it mean to be in the trenches? Is this strictly a class position? So we're saying that anyone of a certain class position is automatically in the trenches, or does it require some sort of political engagement, some sort of politics or ideological engagement at some point? Because how then do we, because to me, the people I would define as being in the trenches are harmed by these more popular analyses that demonize from a position of legitimate left politics, those on the actual radical left, as if, again, there's nothing that we can learn about from George or even Garvey in terms of their analysis of electoral politics or what we might do building from that today. So I'm not really clear. Malcolm X had an argument for electoral politics. The Black Panther Party had an argument for electoral politics. The Black Liberation Army has an argument for electoral politics. So why aren't those frames ever engaged by what is considered to be or meant to be the acceptable left? I'll end there by saying that there is a class position being upheld beyond the racial or any other politics in this kinds of videos that seeks to defend what, from my vantage point, and probably many of others of us gathered here, is an ultimately liberal politics as rebranded as revolutionary. It's a class so that they can maintain their high level YouTube audiences, most of which is going to be white and affluent, and they can maintain their relevance and involve each other in each other's videos and so on and so forth, and never engage anybody on their left, because she's already set that frame as, if you have an analysis that includes not voting or voting for a third party or you are upholding the state, we're not even engaging that, even to explore the logic in those arguments and undercut them or challenge them or disagree with them, right, as people will see in our discussion tomorrow as well.
Right. So if y'all remember when Little Mermaid came out, and I was telling y'all that Chloe and Haley is from where I'm from, and I made a comment, and then her aunt kind of had some beef with me or whatever. But on this video, I actually just noticed, like, their family they got some stuff, but their brother, their uncle, wrote why didn't we riot? His name was Isaac J. Bailey. I don't know if y'all ever heard the book or read it, but she referenced that, and it just really quickly made me think of like how connected they are, and maybe even how and why they even came to being. But a lot of things that I want you to cue 1 minute and 11. I'm sorry, 1 hour and 11 minutes.
Yeah, it's ready.
And then if y'all can draw, because she said it at the beginning, like a movement lawyer. After this, could you probably define what a movement lawyer is?
Today's war was available in yesterday's war. So please understand that the position you play today is the position you would have played. The same roles are available. So babe, if today your only contribution to the movement is tweeting angrily at me that we need to burn it all down, not vote, you are in fact not a burning it all down, just like you would not have been in yesterday's war. You are doing what you would be doing in the movement. Please understand that the burn it all down got it cracking for real. The light the cups up really do that. So if that's not what you're doing, that is not what you do. And that is okay. That is okay. Please divorce yourself from this idea that you need to liken yourself to revolutionaries or posture as anything other than people who care, who are doing their best and who are trying to do their best with what they're capable of and the tools that they have. You do not need to cosplay like revolutionaries. You don't need to posture. You don't need to perpetuate like you the getting it out the mud. Like Marcus Garvey, like you, I am not the bitch burning it all down. And that's not a slight to Garvey, me, or you. But like Garvey, if you believe that the one true path to freedom is a path you yourself are not able to pursue, you must obviously use as many other tools as possible at your disposal, with the knowledge that none of them individually can bring about your liberation, but that they can collectively move you closer. But more important than the fact that none of these tools by themselves can bring about your liberation is remembering that no government administration ever will.
All right. So again, I also now see people in the chat going from she ain't lying, agreeing with her, to now seeing her climax. But go ahead. Any thoughts about what the hell a movement lawyer means, and maybe we might need her, so maybe don't
I
talk
think
too
she was
much.
very clear where she says she's a public defender. And we are all clear on the fact that, especially for people who can't afford legal counsel, how the system railroads such people into accepting terms of incarceration and or probation and parole that is unjust and overreaching. So, and she also spoke specifically about reformist policies in related to bail, related to pretrial detention. I think she was pretty clear on talking about, as an activist or as a movement lawyer, representing those who don't have the resources and advocating for more just and responsive incarceration, bail, and detainment policies, as well as police accountability and oversight.
I think she's
which
that's
is valued work. Bail reform, again, when she mentioned bail reform here in Illinois, it's value and it's relevant work, even though it isn't revolutionary.
Oh, I agree. I think I have a huge bias, since I mentioned my biases a minute ago, for in favor of public defenders, people who do that work. So I appreciate that. But when I think of a movement lawyer, I think of the lawyers that, for instance, Daruba has been inviting us to talk with and about, who would bring cases against the police associations, who would be trying to free political prisoners, who would be, that's, the Abolitionist Law Center, the Jailhouse Lawyers Network, the people who work for the Jericho movement, that's the Bob Boyles and the Kunslers of the past, and the Lynn Washingtons and the Liz Finks. Those are the people I think are. Did I get that name right? I'm confusing with the journalist who works for Mumia. And her husband, her widow just passed too. I'm messing up, but those are the people I think of when I think of movement lawyers. As much as I do respect what public defenders are doing, but again, what I'm really feeling a sort of a defensiveness against is that and now that she's a lawyer too. Noelle Hanrahan, no doubt, prison radio. I mean, she went back and got her law degree just to do that work. So absolutely, but they're not doing it. They're not performing as Lynn Stewart. Thank you. Rest in peace, rest in power to her and Ralph Pointer. They're not using their work as movement lawyers to discredit or discourage truly radical revolutionary analyses and movements. And that's where I'm feeling a defensiveness around the video I'm watching here, where the positioning of herself and her colleagues in this video as the legitimate spokespersons of actual logical and mature politics, they are doing that. As she said, at least she was honest about it from the beginning. And I would just encourage them and others in their audience and anyone else, myself included, to re-engage those ideas and truly understand them and become competent in them, so then we could infuse them in our engagement in electoral politics to the extent we find that necessary. And again, with her recitation of Garvey, I feel like,
and it's funny that she mentioned accelerationist.
Yeah.
At the same time,
she said
what could be more accelerationist than capitalist? Where she's saying that the acceleration of the people are like, hell, there's no turning this around. We have to wait for it to collapse and then rebuild from the rubble. And she denounced those people who take that position. At the same time, she's advocating or seeing or suggesting that you can work with the very forces who are actually not saying step back and let them burn it, where she keeps saying burn it down. Who's burning it down if it's not capitalist?
Right. It's the straw man. She's setting up the straw man against that. That's
and the way she defines a revolutionary, you're not a revolutionary unless you're out engaging in violence.
Burning it down.
They were
when there are factions from government agencies, like everything that she's leveling against. Everything that she's leveling these accusations against, she then turns around and gives legitimacy to the institutions that are actually engaged in what she's talking about.
So I didn't mean to weaponize the comments, but I Erica, what she said there is so bars. And I'm saying publicly, I'm stealing that line from Erica. That whole stop punching left. Everybody want to either punch down or punch left. Stop that.
So
I'm sorry.
Before we get to the other clip, like there's a couple things, right? I'm gonna give you the FD analogy that I would have y'all to debate, but they keep talking about the impact of the two, right? So the impact of the white bold imperialists versus the covert white imperialists. And she goes on talking about the nostalgia of Obama years, and she likened Biden to a weak rebound boyfriend. So again, the Greg Carrian line, the weaker adversary is who they want to put in office, the easiest person to defeat. And that's what they're saying they're doing. Now, FD, the thing I would have y'all, him explain better, is he said he likened voting to washing your hand after you taking a shit, because that lower your chances of catching something or getting sick. And and he said that line a couple of times. He said, whenever you say you don't vote, I'm like, you don't wash your hand after you take a shit? Like that's his line. And I'm like, I would love for you to flesh that out and then have that conversation with Jared based off of, again, the conversation that we will have tomorrow on Renee's show. But that analogy was like, he thought it was strong. He kept saying it like it was strong. And she was like, yeah. And so it was just a wild leftist internet show.
Yeah, what can I say? All right. Did you want to say anything before we run this, or just run it?
This is her. Again, the video is talk about, I can't even remember the title now. What's the title about the
The Ultimate 2024 Election Survival Guide.
Survival guide. So this is how we survive. This is her line. Go ahead.
Need to shift social consciousness past Eric Adams to get it to where mine is, or where it needs to be to help my clients. But I'm if every time that I try to expose what's wrong with the Eric Adams visions to the people that I can at least reach and potentially shift, a group of assholes say, there's no difference between Eric Adams' vision and Curtis Lewa's vision, because you know what happens then? We either stay stuck in place at Eric Adams' vision, or worse, we roll even further down the hill into fascism. Progress is a literal uphill battle, so let's envision it as such, shall we? If you visualize a hill, put liberation at the tippy top. To get there, we the people have to push an enormous boulder up that hill. If liberation is at the top, fascism is at the bottom. And that's where the Republicans are. Above them on that hill is the status quo. That's where the Democrats are. We want to get past that point. If we're standing there on the hill, essentially holding the fort on that boulder, trying to figure out how to push past that point in the hill, and you say there's no difference between that point and the bottom of the hill where fascism is, we might stay put, holding the boulder off. But what's more likely is some people stop helping us try to push the boulder upward or hold it off. They simply let go, and we roll down the hill into fascism. I have been frustrated with this argument, both professionally and personally, for a while. For a while, especially.
Go ahead. Say what, Geechee? What?
Someone said in the comments earlier that you're bad at explaining things.
Okay. And
because you misrepresented what she said.
I misrepresented what she said. What did she say?
Well, the way you, and let me not even tell you what you said. It's on tape. I'll tell you how I felt when you were talking about we got to go past or go through the Democrats. What that is an accurate analogy right there, what she said. Whereas that whole pushing the boulder up the hill and shit like that, I just say, that we don't necessarily have to be on the hill, but what she said in terms of that is accurate in the political the Overton window of U.S. politics.
So again, how am I bad at explaining? Because that's what she said.
Yes.
So how am I bad at?
I don't know. Somebody else said it. It was a comment.
Oh, so that's why it was important for you to just say it, because somebody, not like everybody, but somebody.
Some of these YouTube commentators out here.
Yeah, and they also said that you write about a lot, but I don't know if that's fucking true.
Ouch.
I know, my bad. I love you though. So listen, this whole idea of fascism, right? Red fascism, blue not. Could we, just for the sake of anybody who don't know, I mean, I actually went and looked back again. Like, how would y'all define fascism? You have the BLA says fascism is a repressive form of government that takes on police state characteristics, in that all forms of political, economic, and social opposition is forcibly suppressed to maintain the status quo. Would y'all say that's the definition? Would y'all add to it?
So again, I as a wannabe George Jacksonist, I agree not only with the BLA but George's assessment that it's already here, and it's and this idea that fascism is only going to look one way, stylized in what is usually implanted in our mind's eye from World War II films, et cetera, and so forth. We just assume that anything separate from that isn't quite fascism. And that's why fascism can only be represented by the boogeyman of the Republican Party, as opposed, and which, by the way, if the Republican Party it's illogical even from the sense, if the Republican Party were actually fascist, what makes anyone think that simply electing a Democrat would eradicate the problem? So the Republican Party wouldn't be the bringer of fascism; it would be the symbolic representation of a fascism that is already.
He disagreed because he agreed with everything she just said. That guy up there, the guy up top left, Diallo guy. He said everything she said was true.
So the idea then that we would have to accept Eric Adams as a non-fascistic distinguishable difference from, I suppose she would say, or someone else would say, Giuliani as former mayor, is I think what is lacking in her and others' analysis of the people they will passingly reference, specifically George Jackson in this case, and others, rather than actually engaging that politics. But the problem with actually engaging that politics is you don't get the money that generates those fancy edits and that brilliant production. And it takes you more, I think, even more than that. Just this is my own speculation here. It takes you out of certain social political circles once you are deemed as too far to the left, or per our chat, to insufficient in our ability to engage criticism.
Diallo, before you go, please give us your definition of fascism. If you agree, disagree, because if you already agree with her, I would just like to know your definition of fascism.
Well, here's the thing about fascism. There is no singular definition. Fascism doesn't really have a definition. It has characteristics.
Okay.
And the reason why is because fascism, unlike socialism, liberalism, even communism and capitalism, people who are engaged in fascists don't like to self-identify. So there's really no fascist institute, no fascist philosophy. And in fact, many fascists love to hurl the term fascist at other people and call other people fascist. So because of that, I can tell you the characteristics and components of fascism. But in terms of the definition of fascism, it's really, at least I've yet to encounter one that fully encompasses what it is.
So give us some characteristics then, because I think BLA was headed in the right direction, but give us some characteristics.
Well, but BLA, there's also a racial or racist or racial component to it, a genetic or what's called a eugenics component to every fascist movement in terms of purity of blood and contamination of blood, and associating the people with the land. The people are the land, and so to preserve the land, to preserve the people, hyper nationalism, the belief in a history, a lost history that never existed, a belief in a derailment of moving towards a grand destiny or a grand outcome. There are a lot of components to fascism that not all fascist movement have, and some fascist movement have some or other ones, but ultimately, militant hyper nationalism and xenophobia and jingoism, scapegoating is a big component of fascism, where the fascist appeals to the fascists by telling them that your problems are from are a product of another vulnerable group, as opposed to the problem being the elites and the state. Admiration of authoritarianism and the elites.
I mean, you just sound like you're describing the Democratic Party, though. Like that's what
I'm not describing the Democratic Party. I would not define the Democratic Party as fascist.
But you would define Republican as fascist?
Yeah, the Republican Party currently is a full blown fascist party. If you look at Agenda 2025, if you look at their leaders, and if you look at their policy platform, they are fascist. Whereas the Democrat is a corporatist party. I'm not saying that the Democrats are a good party or anti-fascist. And I think many of Democratic policies, especially from the Clinton era and Clinton policies, laid the fertile soil for the emergence of a fascist party.
Can you help me understand that distinction? What policy, like if you were to give an example of a policy that distinguishes the corporatist Democrats from the fascistic Republicans, what would that be?
Well, number one, there is no singular figurehead or a singular fulcrum figure like Trump in the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party also has divergence within the party. You do have the progressive Democrats, the and various caucuses within the Democrats that don't exist with the Republican Party. I'm sorry?
This just sounds like a car argument. Do you believe
it's not an argument. Listen, These are
The weaker
characteristics of the party. Now, if you think they are secretly fascist and their forward face is that they're tricking us, but everything I say
But you
about
don't.
the
But
party
you don't think
is
that you
what?
you don't think the Democrats are covertly behaving
No,
and believing in the
I
same
don't
thing
think the
that
Democratic Party. See, this is the thing. You have individual party members, and then you have the overall party. And within the party, which is the Democrats, part of their marketing, they are a larger tent party. Many people run to the Democrats. There are many Republicans who are exiting the Republican Party and signing up with the Democratic. There is a right-wing corporatist conservative Democrat. There are theological Democrats. There are also progressive Democrats. Democrats are supporting abortion. They are advocating for re-implementation, which they implement these policies and then undermine them with everything from banking consolidation and corporate consolidation and other components of fascism that part of their platform they oppose. And one of the reasons why most people in the United States or people that follow Western politics say that the Republican Party is so forthright and aggressive and direct, where the Democrats seem so squeamish. I mean, I don't see anywhere where Democratic policies, now they engage in gerrymandering, no doubt, but I don't see mass disenfranchisement coming out of the Democratic Party like it's the Republican Party. They are not the same party.
well,
Well, they first of all, they wouldn't want to disenfranchise because they need the myth that they are the people's party to get their people elected. So they're
And-
going to
and-
by default.
and she
Go
makes
ahead,
that. No, I'm saying, but
Well,
she makes
I
the
don't
point
think
that
that's
the
all
point that Jared
Democrats
makes. She makes that
say
point.
that they're the People's Party. You have
No-
the Nancy Pelosi wing and other
No,
people,
again, to
and
your
a lot
point,
of
there are
Democratic.
the individuals, and then there's the party. The party, what it wants as many votes as it can get because it presents itself as the people's alternative to the Republicans. But
She makes
what
that
I
point.
asked, but my point was specific around a question of policy and beyond what I again think are not unimportant and or irrelevant, but are the garnish policies around abortion or I think
That's
you
not
said
garnish. That's central. I mean, black
oh
women are dying out here because they're being denied access to
okay all right,
reproductive help, and that's not a
no,
garnish policy.
it is
That's a
it
fundamental right.
you're miss again. I didn't say it wasn't a fundamental right from the perspective of power and what their ultimate goals are. Abortion, and again, I'm making reference. I maybe put too much on it, but this is where I keep going back to what I think is the par excellence example. When Karl Rove, Bush's brain, made the point, we are intentionally going to construct abortion and gay rights as topics we can win around because we don't want people focused on what are for them more important issues around militarism, capital, wealth, et cetera, and so forth. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's unimportant. That was my whole point. That's why of all people, I would think you would appreciate this nuance. So what I'm saying is that from their perspective, they're happy to from their perspective win or lose votes, depending which party we're talking about, on the issue of abortion, as long as they're not winning or losing votes on the issue of capitalism, imperialism, redistribution.
I agree,
et cetera, and so forth. So my point is, that the willingness on our end to allow for them to rebrand a definition of fascism around issues like abortion, gay rights, gender equality, so on and so forth, anything short of national liberation, all of that. To the extent that we are able to say that if they offer us that, then they're not engaged in a fascist project of aligning with corporations which are just the realignment of an anonymous ruling elite to under the imperialist rule of law extract and exploit, then we're missing the point. And this is why
that every government where the state is aligned with the ruling elite is a fascist government.
If the goals of that ruling elite are to be a police state, to be imperialist, capitalist, exploitive, suppressive of national rights, et cetera, so forth, yeah, absolutely. Because I'm accepting the definition of the BLA and of George Jackson, but I said that at the beginning. That's the definition of fascism I'm operating under.
And I guess, yeah. I think the like Ricky said, in terms of the class context, when you say ruling elite, you meaning what? Like, could the mass majority? No, when Diallo says ruling elite, are you saying that the mass people are in control of the government or the state apparatus? Are you calling them the ruling elite too? Elite? Like when you say ruling elite, what are you saying?
Some of them are. Not all politicians are members of the ruling elite.
No, I'm saying though, but when you use the word ruling elite, right? Let's say if the state, like Nicaragua, for instance, is there a ruling elite in Nicaragua?
Yes.
And who's the ruling elite?
There are the old colonizers, the old school colonizers. Whereas the in terms of the ruling elite in a leftist or progressive state, there are people who run the government. They might not necessarily be right-wing reactionaries, but yeah, if any state that has a hierarchy within the state, then those people rule or govern or governing elite if it's better.
All right. Well, this is I make a propose. I think we need to do a car ball 2.0, and y'all bring a friend. Maybe Jared, you bring Nefa, and Diallo can rock with car team, and I think that would be a better debate.
And the debate is the Democratic Party fascistic?
That or the Democratic Party is the role to Black liberation, since he seemed to agree with the sister.
She didn't say that Democratic Party was a road to liberation. She never said that. She never said the Democratic
Party. She didn't say you have to go past them.
I thought that wasn't the implication with the rolling up the hill.
That's literally the road, bro.
This is okay. Let me clarify, because that's what I thought when you said that's what she said. What she said was that as the people progress, they're going to not necessarily go with it, that it really, the Democratic Party was another obstacle to liberation. Along the path to liberation, the Democratic Party is not a partner or a goal. It was an obstacle. And we need to go past them to get to liberation, or go through them to get to liberation. But it is, if we go past them, they are not as bad as the Republicans, but they're still an obstacle on the way to liberation.
They're obstacle that you run towards while you're running away from.
You're not running towards. You're going towards liberation. And one of the bumps in that road as you push up the hill. So she's basically saying we can continue to cheat from her analysis and her conclusions. The Republicans taking the more state power or formal power
not
that
the policies. It's just the party, right? So
I think it's the policies.
Okay, so
how do you separate a party from its policies and its platforms?
Well, I think if you have your arrangement of the policies that you focus on, you wouldn't be so focused on Democrats in particular, and any people that can help you achieve your objective.
So that would be my point. If you're not separating the party from its platforms, the Democrats are just as obviously fascistic as anybody. That's my point. That their platforms are. By the way, just real quick, FD's in the chat because he said he's texted. He said he's willing to come on, but I would suggest that we schedule it for another time because we're already way over. I didn't want to rush
that's
it.
Fine. Yeah, that's fine.
So we can see about having him come on next week if you want.
And we're still gonna play his clip at the end right now.
Oh yeah.
So here's the thing. Are you saying, Jared?
Yes.
You're saying that on a scale that you're asserting that the Democrats are just as fascistic as the Republican Party?
Yes.
What do you see as is there any divergence or difference between the two parties?
Yes.
in terms of
the fox and the wolf, as Malcolm summarized it. And that's my point, that the Democrats present themselves differently to reach the same objective. And I think we've not quite figured out, myself included, a maneuver around that. But that is what I'm saying.
okay.
And in some ways, I think that they're worse because they can get away with things, particularly under Obama, for instance, that they might not have gotten away with. I mean, even now, with all the support Palestine is getting, I wonder if it wouldn't even be more if this was happening under a Republican president.
It absolutely is, and it was.
What do you mean?
It
It
absolutely
absolutely.
is. Well, with
No,
Trump
we can't
moving-
judge October 7th on because this is I think a bit different than what we've seen in my lifetime in terms of an uprising and a response. But that's all. So what I'm saying is, I think Palestinians might even be getting. And this is why, again, I struggle with this. George Jackson argued we should be voting for the Republicans. We should be doing, as she would argue, as Ole would argue, we should be,
Right.
what is it? I forgot the phrase that they use to define it, acceleration. To the extent I want to be a George Jackson, as I said, I want to be because I can't do that. I can't see that. But I can't see voting for the Democratic alternative as an option either because I see that as part of the same thing.
Now, because this is what confuses me about elections. We're not just talking about presidential elections, right?
Of course not. But
We're talking about everything from regional, local, state, and national elections, right?
absolutely.
Jared?
Sure, yeah.
And so on a local level, like the mayor of Chicago, who's a Democratic mayor, he's a fascist.
Are you asking me this question?
Yes. Yeah.
The party he's in is a fascistic party. I'm not saying everybody in there is themselves a consciously performing. Some of them are well-meaning people who think that they can work within that party to do something else. I'm saying the part, but that's why you were asking the part. You even started. I thought I interpreted.
Yeah. Well,
that the party has its own goals.
Think when we talk about parties, we have to talk about politicians. We have to talk about political parties. We have to talk about the apparatus.
But your mayor is not running the Democratic Party. I'm talking about what would be the equivalent of the DLC today. I think they disbanded and rebranded. But yeah,
is not a fascist in his policy. In
I've
his
seen
ideology,
paper straws. I've
in
seen plastic straws, and I've seen Diallo straws. That's why I asked you to define fascism so that we could just get that out of the way, and then you can decide if your mayor is a fascist mayor or not. But
the mayor of Chicago is not a fascist, but he's a Democrat.
Well, again, whatever your definition is of fascism, that's not to say what she talked about going up the hill to a non-fascist Democrat or falling down to a fascist Republican. Does that mean every Republican a fascist? Would you say that?
I think every active Republican that you cannot be. I don't know of within the. Now, you could tell me because, again, within the Democratic Party, the Big Tent Party, as Jared say, they want to give the impression that they are a Big Tent Party, which they are. There are a lot of divergence and a lot of conflict within the Democratic Party. We understand that the purse strings, like the Democratic Party funding is in contradiction and in conflict with its constituents. Because we know that most Black people vote Democrat, that there are a lot of people with progressive ideas, reformist ideas and approaches, and they tend to caucus with, support, or be active Democrats. Now, you're saying they're all tricked and they're all don't understand that they're within a fascist party.
Who say I wait, I said that? I don't care what the Democrats believe. I said most of us, including yourself, cannot see that the Democratic Party is a fascistic party. Because
I think the United States is
whatever they do, whether the Kentucky, whatever they do in terms of the Democratic, whatever they do has convinced even you, which I'm surprised that they aren't fascistic as well as.
Well, when you say fascistic versus fascist, You're saying they're a fascist party. Because saying something is fascistic is a little different than saying it's fascist.
Okay, they're a fascist party as well as the Republicans.
Not to me, and not how I'm using that today.
And to what extent? Because I know some non-fascist Democrats. Do you know some non-fascist Republicans?
Well, I don't know a lot of Republicans at all, but I'm pretty sure if there's non-fascist Democrats, there's non-fascist Republicans.
Let's just go off of Republican elected officials.
Actually, yeah. Matter of fact, I do. My homeboy in Stone Mountain said he voted Republican, and I know he's not a fascist.
No. I said no. I didn't say voters, because a lot of independents vote. Because I'm an independent, but I've voted for Democrats before. I voted for the Democratic mayor. You know, I've voted for another who lost.
Let us do this clip real quick.
Opponents. I'm not talking about voters. I'm talking about elected officials.
We didn't get the boys students and that. Let's do this clip real quick. And we might have to skip boys for next week because all the students spoke.
They sure did.
Down on base building rather than lobbying and policy advocacy in Washington, or frankly, even at the state level. I do it some at the local level when there are sympathetic elected officials who I think really get it. But I think we have to change the facts on the ground.
Yeah.
And the way we're going to do that is through base building. So personally, I'm working in LA County. I'm working in Memphis. I'm working here in New York City, and I'm supporting struggles all over the country. In whatever ways I can, but I'm not spending a lot of time working with the mainstream civil rights organizations, the lobbyists in Washington, even though I have friends there and I have people who I think have the right analysis, but I just don't see the point right now in investing a lot of energy in federal policy making. Because we're just not going to get anywhere. So let's change the facts on the ground so that more people like Cori Bush can run for election and get elected.
And to Alex's point about getting folk like Cori Bush elected and what I mean by we can work with these people, I recently helped support Cori Bush in the Unlock the Box campaign with their End Solitary Confinement Act they recently introduced.
I want to be very clear. These in Atlanta should be ashamed of themselves because it's all niggas out here running the game for this cop city shit, right? So, make no mistake, that is a problem. That is a challenge. But also make no mistake, if the white woman would have won over Andre Dickens out here in Atlanta, if Atlanta had a fully white administrative body to go along with the fully white corporate overseers, it wouldn't even have been a question. It wouldn't even have been a chance to even engage with it. The one thing I'll give the anti-democrat sentiment is that it lulls to sleep.
Yeah.
Right? It lulls to sleep. Dickens, who I voted for Dickens here in Atlanta, right? Because it was between him and a clearly pro-cop black woman. I love y'all, but y'all be getting away with some shit in the political arena.
No, that's some carceral shit.
Right, some carceral shit. It was between him and an explicitly pro-cop black woman running for mayor in Atlanta after all 75 of the other people got out the race. Atlanta's weird. And so I voted for him. I didn't vote for him with the spirit of this is the revolution starting here in Atlanta. I voted for him because I was the best person for the job. But if the pro-cop woman would have won, they'd have shot more than one protester in that forest. You feel me?
Yeah.
The whole this is a equation. There are massive elements to all of these political actions and movements. Oh no, okay. That was what I was trying to get at is, and so he got into office and a lot of niggas went to sleep. They went back to sleep, right? And so he's been running this game on Cop City. He got it. I don't know what check he got or where the checks are going. We know that Coca-Cola and Lockheed and all these people are.
So, again, I don't know if it was a slip, but first he said it was between Dickens and a white woman. And
A
then
black
he said,
woman. I thought he said a black woman.
no, he started out with a white woman. He said those white women would have won, blah, blah, blah. And then he went into a black woman. And so I wasn't confused. I was confused which one he was talking about. If it's the black woman or the white woman against Dickens. But Dickens, I don't remember him not being pro state or cops. And then again, it's the conflation that Greg Carr makes also. It would have been way worse if Torque wouldn't have been the only one that was shot. It would have been multiple people. So I would like more so for the people who are saying it would have been better on this case to prove it, right? Again, the same thing with what you talked about with Carr. When Lucretia Clemens is in that office, you're saying that she did this as a Democrat, and you're saying what the Republican judge would have done was twice worse, or whatever the case would be. I just would want that conversation to be more fleshed out and proven, as opposed to it almost feel like hot takes for real. Because what is there to prove there that a Republican would have been way worse when this city has been under black Democratic rule for quite some time? And
look, it came up.
Can y'all hear him?
His sound is out.
Yeah. It came up.
You're not muted either. That's what you get.
I know.
FD took you out, yo.
The ancestors.
Is this working? Is this
Yeah,
better?
you back.
Make any difference? Am
Yeah,
I
can
back?
hear you now.
You
Okay.
back. You back at it.
He wasn't
So-
muted.
so-
It was just went out.
It wasn't. Yeah. So what all right. What was I just trying to say? That what I was saying was it came up yesterday in what will air tomorrow in a reflection of today, but what bothers me again more than anything, almost exclusively, is the initial framing of this discussion, like so many others, that says we're eschewing everything to the left. We're leaving out this immature, illogical, radical left, and we're staying within the confines of this acceptable, sanctionable discussion. And in that context, everything that's being said takes on a different logic. I just don't. What I would prefer is I would love, to your point, as I understood it, more research and explanation that seeks to definitively prove these claims that these voting choices we're making are making the kinds of progress and having the kinds of impact that I think is being claimed, versus what we might get should we be attempting other ways of engaging. And I would like for more discussion to occur around differently engaging these electoral spaces, so that we don't get so easily caught up in where we are now, where, as from my outsider, non-expertise view of what's happening in Atlanta and elsewhere, is that these are not resulting in the kinds of victories and differences that most people want and deserve.
I'd like to say, based on the sister's diagram, what she's articulating is accurate. The Democrats are bad and the Republicans are objectively worse, for wherever you take that on. Another thing that we all agreed on, that being civically engaged does not negate being revolutionary. As I advocate for Black people, they need to vote policy. Don't vote politician or party, but vote policy. And when we engage and think about those policies in our own interests, we need to be co-distant and calculating when it comes to the U.S. political infrastructure. And with all that being said, we can evaluate the horrendous negative components of the imperialist state of the United States. And we could talk about what's on the ballot. And anybody who is civically engaged, you'll find that anytime you go to the ballot, you will find that 90% of the things on the ballot is not Democrat or Republican. You're not voting for any party or politician. You're voting everything from water reclamation to budget allotments to taxation reforms and other types, and many of them you're voting for nonpartisan judges. I know that's an anathema, but we should be, as long as we are subject to the state, we should engage the state and extract, harm, reduce, and where we can disrupt as well. And the real work of liberations, because neither party, as you pointed out, neither party is going to stop the capitalist machine that requires ecosystem destruction, imperialist party, assassination, CIA, FBI. Those certain components of the U.S. governing apparatus are independent of party. And have survived all these parties, and even the presidents who, I'm going to smash the CIA into 1,000 pieces. We see what happens to them. So those aren't on the ballot for either party. So when we talk about voting and the political party, as adults, I think we should discuss what is possible, what can be extracted, or what can be subverted as we enter the ballot box, instead of saying, since I'm not going to get a unicorn and a chocolate castle from the ballot box, so they're both bad. So when we whittle it down, because it's relatively limited what we can gain or what we can impose through the ballot box, is a relatively limited space and a limited options. And those limited options, I think, are all we should be debating and discussion. And everything else we discuss as far as Black people, Black liberation, is outside of and in opposition to the political process. But again, if we call everything fascist, nothing's fascist. And so is the Democratic Party fascist? No.
So wait a minute. So again, I was very clear with my definition of fascism and why I define the Democratic Party as fascist. They defend a police state. They defend an extractive relationship with the planet and the population, capitalism, imperialism, so on. And I'm going off of what the BLA and George Jackson has said as their definition. So this whole thing of everybody's fascist and nobody's fascist doesn't apply to what I'm saying. And that's part of my problem with the framing in the video. And now with the framing
as you also articulated, not every politician, not every Democratic or Republican candidate has any say within the international policies. They don't really have any say. Like the Democratic mayor was aggressively and even violently opposed by the Policemen Benevolent Association and the police union. And they went full on against his to endorse his opponent, even breaking certain election laws to advance his opponent. So I wish it was clear and cut and dry, this Lex Luthor shit where this is the bad guy and this is the good guy. But it's a little more complex than that.
So is my argument, which you have not let me finish making, or you are not listening to when I do. So as I will continue on, if I may, pre-interruption, what I'm saying is it's not to say Lex Luthor good or bad. It is to say we do need a more nuanced engagement within the context of radical political framing. That's what I'm saying. But we don't get that. We are encouraged to ignore radical analyses and histories and to only engage within the frame of what's on the ballot, and then raising questions of how do things get on the ballot? Why aren't we determining what's on the ballot? Why aren't we determining the different set of agenda items to be brought up? All of those things get left off or dismissed as illogical or immature, or as being reduced to it's good or bad. So I have even praised you, Diallo, for your nuanced approach to voting, because I've said it comes from a context, for most part, of a radical political frame. But what we are encouraged to is not that. So to your point, I do not, as much as I'm arguing the Democratic Party is itself a fascist party that behaves in fascistic ways as a fascist party, individual members or candidates or campaigns or races are happening for different reasons with different people involved for their own purposes, where some relative gains might be of value if they're engaged, as I'm arguing, from the perspective of the organized perspective or frame. So, but again, we don't get invited to that. So there's the differences that you want to highlight between the two parties get extrapolated in the context of liberal and neoliberal frames to mean, hey, we can do things within the Democratic Party that we just cannot do and shouldn't expect to be able to do, and that we should use in terms of their failures and limitations to expand or heighten the contradictions for real and expand our radicalness and encourage different approaches. That's at least more along the lines of what I'm trying to say.
It seems like we're only diverting based on, you will say that it is a fascist party, and I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a fascist party. But other than that, where is the disagreement or the divergence?
Listen, we almost at 3:30, and we can either go to voice comments or the comments, and we can finish up there. How y'all feel? Which one y'all going to?
I'm good. I got time.
Where's the divergent?
I'm not sure. I mean, I guess in our definition of fascism, I don't know. I guess.
Yeah, because I mean, I agree with everything you just said. It's just as we are victims of a genocidal oppression, and as I see how white people, the white progressives, white liberals, white left, and white right-wing reactionaries, as they progress upon and how many more times they're going to embark on a extermination campaign and genocidal murder orgies across the globe. I just think when we are diagnosing and in terms of what work needs to be done in confronting, challenging, and subverting their various agendas, I just think that we have to be more mindful, because, you know, when you call in, when white folks get to start to really,
I thought we had just agreed on what we disagreed or not to restate your whole argument. So do we get requests for FD to come on? Do we want to let him come on? I was only suggesting we wait because I didn't want to be rushed. But if you all have time and he has time, we can do it now.